I'm going to turn the program over to Peter Altenberger, who's going to facilitate this session, which is going to focus on assessment practices. Take it away, Peter.
Thanks, Karen. Good afternoon, everybody. We've heard some great discussions on different ways to try and stimulate learning. And as we all know, one of the keys is then trying to figure out what we're doing is really improving the overall outcomes for those learners. And there are things that we do that focus on simple outcomes that we try to measure within our courses. And then we know we've set up a curriculum to really try and enhance improvement in knowledge, skills, and abilities across that entire curriculum. So lots of different ways to do lots of different assessments. I think this could be a conference in and of itself. We're going to touch kind of across the spectrum with three dynamic speakers who are going to hopefully ignite your thoughts about some new ways to think about assessment. Those speakers are Tammy Struessel. Dr. Struessel is an associate professor at the University of Colorado. Dr. Wruble, who is associate professor and director of the PT program at the University of Delaware, and Dr. Kimberly Topp, who is professor and chair emeritus at the University of California, San Francisco. So I'm going to stop talking and let them talk so that we can get right into it and have enough time to really have some discussions as well. So Tammy, I'm going to stop sharing and let you take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Peter. Let's get my screen shared here. So thank you very much for inviting me to present. Last October at the Educational Leadership Conference, my co-presenter Megan Hernandez and I presented on this idea of ungrading. We did an educational session, and we also did a platform on our experiences integrating it into our capstone course.
Tammy, so, because we can't see your screen yet, so if we're
So you can't see any.
We see you.
Okay, let me try it again.
Yeah. There you go.
Better? Okay.
Yep. Just go presenter view now, and then you're good.
All right. Yeah. Sorry about that.
And then same thing at the display setting at the top. Just swap it. I don't know. It always does that to me too.
There we go. Better? Okay. All right. I'll get this right one of these times. So, all right. So, Megan and I presented at the Educational Leadership Conference on this idea of ungrading. And so I was asked to present, and I want to give a lot of credit to Megan. This is an area that she's actually doing some dissertation work on for her EDD. And so that's pretty exciting. But we've learned a lot through applying it in different areas of our curriculum. And I'll bring up some different things as we go along. So first, kind of foundationally, we're talking about grading as a subset of assessment. We know that other forms of assessment might actually enhance learning in a way that grading might not. And just generally some concerns about grading as assessment. So there's a number of these things that have been alluded to kind of along the way, but we know we have high levels of learner anxiety in general and a mental health crisis across the country. Also that grades can reduce the interest that students have in learning. It also can lessen their preference for challenging tasks, kind of doing the bare minimum to get a grade, and reduce the quality of their thinking. And it can increase cheating, competitiveness, those kinds of things. And then it's been shown that focusing on grades and focusing on learning are actually thought to be inversely related. So some real kind of pretty strong critiques about using grading and thinking that you're actually assessing learning. So the other issue that has been established, and this is the area that Megan's doing a lot of her work in, is that instructor grading can actually perpetuate structural inequities in our systems. So what is ungrading? So ungrading is this umbrella term for any assessment that decenters the action of an instructor assigning a summary grade to student work. And the focus really is on alternative assessment options. So again, it's this decentering of the instructor, and there's been quite a bit of discussion about that as we've gone about things today, and focusing more on the learner and less on the instructor. So what it is not, and this is the first thing that a lot of people, I think there's a little bit of a branding problem with the term ungrading. Didn't make that up myself, but so grading is not pass-fail. And it does not mean not grading. In fact, many of our institutions would not be in favor of that, nor does it mean that learning is not assessed. It's really a very learner-centered approach and encourages a lot of co-creating and co-assessment between the educator and the learner. It's thought to be a more fair and equitable approach, and it can actually be used even with multiple choice standardized tests. But the learning should not stop there. That's the fundamental part of ungrading. And so thinking about, there's been a little bit of discussion on like NPTE and things like that. We're doing our students a disservice. We don't have them practice multiple choice tests if they're going to be tested on that. But are we stopping the learning there? So you think about someone who gets a 73%, which at our institution is passing, just barely. They haven't learned, or they haven't been able to demonstrate that they've learned a quarter of the material. And so that's a pretty big deal. So at ELC, we spent a lot of time talking about these different areas, and but I don't think these are unfamiliar to a lot of people, but they're really kind of foundational formative assessment for learning practices that are part of ungrading. So metacognition, self-reflection, self-assessment, and then different kinds of feedback, instructor and peers. And we've done a lot actually with peer feedback and had some interesting results with that in our capstone course. So also at ELC, we spent a lot of time talking about these 4 different areas. Today, we're gonna skip the humanized part, although I know there's been a lot of kind of discussion about that already. So it's definitely a big part of this, and inviting the learner to be more equal partner. But we're going to talk about the other 3 primarily, and just some basic examples because I don't have enough time to go into a lot of depth. But so first is this great quote: not everything has to be judged. Some things can just be experienced. And so thinking about bringing in patients or different kinds of simulated learning and things like that. Like, do you have to have a rubric? Do you have to have points associated with everything? So that's one thought. And then inviting the students into the conversation about grades. Some examples here: be open to alternative interpretations, including when we're absolutely sure that we have the right answer on an exam, but someone reads it, and we've all been there, I think, where you've even used a question multiple times, and then some student brings up a question and you're like, Ridley hadn't never thought about it that way. So being, using humility, recognizing uncertainty. So creating a space where individually the students can discuss questions and bring up issues. So being very explicit, I would argue beforehand about what they need to provide for you to consider their case. And then another option is providing the correct answers, but no feedback, and then actually have them turn in a corrected exam. So again, they got a 73. Are they gonna be, looking at that 25% of the content that they didn't get? No. If you're gonna just move right on and you're gonna build on that exam, and they maybe haven't learned that material. So and by ungrading, they get the same amount of credit for the corrected exam as if they would have gotten it right in the first place. So some other practices, so some sort of review and reflection on performance. So they take the exam, they get their results, and they write a reflection. And there's a major emphasis on this idea of additional action steps. So what are they going to do to make sure that they do have that material? Another idea is this breaking down the exam. So replacing perhaps an in-class exam prep with a post-exam review session. So they could break up into small groups, discuss the merits of each question, and then actually have a vote as a class if that question is fair or not. And then we've come up with what's called an exam autopsy form. And this comes from a few different resources, and I have to credit our students do the Score Builders class for NPTE. And so some of this is based on that, but we're calling it an exam autopsy form. And this is used in a couple of different ways with our students currently. Some faculty have chosen to use it as the first step towards remediation for students who have been challenged really with particular exams, and this is the first step for remediation. And then Megan actually uses it in her human growth and development class as just part of the post-exam. So if you look here, some of it's like test taking errors. Did you make careless mistakes, misread the question, or was it really an academic preparation issue? You're unfamiliar, or decision making. And then the third one is maybe you had time management challenges and you weren't able to finish the exam. And then so each question you would do that with, and then reflect on the correct answer and why that was correct. So many of us are involved in competency and practical examinations. So following this philosophy into some of those. So we have, for instance, feedback sessions where the student really drives the discussion, asking the learner how they feel like they did and making sure there's positives as well as challenges. And I think an earlier speaker mentioned something along these lines. Asking if you can provide feedback. And then once you provide the feedback, make sure that they reflect again so that you're sure that they have the right that they've gone through the process of that reflection. And then coming together to decide on next steps. Like, are you finished then and you just put in a grade? Or do they need some additional work? So like I had someone just about 6 months ago that really was struggling with understanding where their challenges were. And so we agreed together that she was going to do some additional research, and then she emailed me kind of her additional understanding. So the final grade in ungrading should reflect how well the learner eventually understands each idea, as opposed to just an arbitrary time point where they get whatever grade it is on the exam, for instance. So in our capstone course, we actually have this process where we outline specific criteria in order to meet each what our expectations are for the course, and then they do a self-evaluation and they provide their own grade for what they have learned and what grade they believe that they deserve. And so this is the actual description that's in the syllabus and on Canvas for them. And so some of it is around their learning, what have you learned, those kinds of things. But this is very peer feedback focused. And so we also have, as part of their grade, what have they done to help other people in their group get better? And I have to say that when we changed to ungrading, the peer feedback process changed entirely, because we moved ourselves away as the primary reader of their paper, and instead they're really thinking about their peer group and them reading, and they get the feedback from them, and it's really made a huge difference. And then there's an enormous focus on effort and participation. So many people might be thinking, so what if you disagree with the grade that the student gives themselves? And I have to say, first, it has been very unusual if this has happened. In fact, most of the students actually end up grading themselves lower than what the faculty might have graded them. And I had a student say that might be because they actually know what they are capable of. And if we're talking about effort and participation, maybe they grade themselves a little lower than what a faculty member might have done. Okay, in fact, when we did a comparison, that was our platform at ELC, a comparison of the same course before ungrading and after ungrading, and the students actually graded themselves 1.8% lower than what the faculty had done in earlier versions of the case of the course. But what do? We do put this into the syllabus, where we note the right to change grades as appropriate. And so far, we haven't had too many issues with that, but you always have to have it in the syllabus just in case. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and looking forward to the discussions later on.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, Ellen's gonna set up now, so if you'll stop share.
As soon as it stopped.
Let's see.
Tammy's is still sharing. I don't think it allows to at one time.
Yeah. She's working on it, I think. Okay. All right, well, Ellen is setting up. I just want to say really quickly that we had a speaker who was going to be in this spot, have to drop out to a family emergency this past Monday. I reached out to Ellen in the chance that I might get a replacement, and she graciously agreed and stepped in. So she is pinch hitting, and big props to her, because she's only had about 3 or
All righty. Okay. So thank you very much. And it's nice to be with many of you today. And my name is Ellen Wruble, and today I am going to speak about program evaluation. I thought that this would be an important concept for us to really dig into the science of evaluation, as this is a conference on the science of teaching and learning. Like many of you, our department has spent considerable time rethinking our curriculum, and we were fortunate to be guided by the Center for Research in Education and Social Policy. And through these discussions, what we learned is that our evaluative data could be more meaningful if we developed a stronger evaluation design that enabled us to identify plausible explanations as to why our programs may or may not have met the expectations that were established through our indicators and targets. So in this next 10 minutes, I'm going to share an approach to program evaluation that helps reduce uncertainties, that can improve effectiveness, guide decisions, and most important, to measure impact. And through this discussion, I really hope that we can honestly consider if our academic and clinical units would be better positioned to meet the requirements of the changing landscape if we were more diligent in adhering to the best practices as revealed in the science of evaluation. So let's start with the big picture of what is evaluation. And I'm going to use the definition as a method used to judge the merit or worth of something, a program, a curriculum, in order to identify and use better quality practices more effectively to improve the lives of people. So you can see that VALU, value, is embedded within the word evaluation. And value is derived from the Latin word valere, which means to be well, strong, and of worth. Well and strong may relate to merit and have to do with the inherent value, and worth is typically interpreted within specific contexts. So evaluation is about making judgments, but these are informed decisions, and these are informed decisions about merit, value, and worth. In addition, evaluation is a means toward continuous improvement. Evaluation allows us to understand whether services were delivered as they were expected, which is the process, and whether they have accomplished what they were meant to accomplish, which is impact. So program evaluation is utilized to answer the following questions. Did the program or curriculum work? If so, to what extent? For whom? What works better? And what works and for whom? And to answer those questions, we systematically collect information about our program's activities, characteristics, and outcomes. So where do we begin? we usually start with understanding our program. And understanding our program is not just about what we are doing, but why we are doing it and how the what and the why connect. So to understand our program is to explicitly state its theory, which is defining why our program should work and making the theory that underlies our program explicit. And this lays the foundation upon which we can accomplish program improvement and measure program effectiveness. So gathering multiple sources of information allows us to understand our program from multiple perspectives and expectations, because we feel it might be incorrect to rely solely on what we know or what we think we know about our program. As mentioned, program evaluation begins with the identification of the intended outcomes. We talked about this. It begins with where we wish to go. This in large part supports the backwards curriculum design process and is a crucial step that must be completed before we move to identification of strategies necessary to reach the intended outcomes or goals, which is represented by the here on the slide. Focus groups are one way to gather multiple perspectives that inform the outcomes of our programs. And included in this list are several different groups whose insight might help make the meaning and intention of our programs more explicit. So we have seen this slide before. The difference now is the inclusion of a black box. Modeling a program refers to the path between the here and the there, which provides the theory as to why our strategies should achieve our goals. Explicitly stating our program theory is about opening the black box. It answers the question, why do we think we can get to there from here? The key to effective evaluation is to understand our program, which includes understanding how and why it's supposed to work. It's understanding the miracle noted in the cartoon, which we know is not really a miracle, but the culmination of intentional effort. So to reiterate, the theory of change is an explicit record that helps define why our programs and curricula should work. The theory lays the foundation upon which we can accomplish program improvement, which is the formative evaluation we've been speaking about, and measure program effectiveness, more like a summative evaluation. And there are several components of program theory. First are goals, or what the program intends to accomplish. Second are the strategies to be used and the activities that will be put in place. These specify how our program will accomplish its goals. Third are the assumptions and the theories that link the program strategies to the goals. They explain why the program should work, and they're the basis of the program's theory. And fourth are the contextual conditions and resources necessary for the program to operate. So at the University of Delaware, focus groups identified 3 primary graduate outcomes: the creation of movement experts, knowledge translators, and change agents. And here's an example. It's hard to read, and it's big, and it's bold, and it's messy, but this is a theory of change. And this is how we are going to explain the theory underlying our program, which will allow us to attain the outcomes that I just mentioned. When this was first presented, I can tell you it was a bit overwhelming and intimidating. But if you sit with it for a while, it really was reassuring and refreshing to be able to articulate the assemblance of activities that are designed to guide us to our outcomes. Now let's talk about logic models for a minute. A logic model explains how we expect a program's strategies and activities to result in the goals and objectives. In essence, it describes the main elements of a program and how they work together to meet the goals. Logic modeling depicts a process, and the model created through the process is a representation of the program's theory. This model becomes the foundation of the program, and the evaluation questions will be generated from logic modeling. So the logic model becomes the roadmap. So if you look a bit more, first you start off with implementation strategies identified to address a particular problem. Implementation involves inputs, activities, and outputs. Inputs refer to the resources that exist, things such as money, staff, equipment, materials. Activities refer to those things you will do to achieve the results, such as implementing different types of learning, recruitment, or retention. Outputs tell us what happened and refer to the direct products or deliverables of the program, such as the number of community-based activities occurring throughout the academic year or the number of students recruited or retained. Outcomes are the intended results and can include short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals. And as we know, results can occur both immediately and sometime after the activities are completed. So it is possible that some program outcomes may not be achieved until some point post-graduation. Logic models also allow for evaluation of impact. And impact refers to the long-term societal, health, and economic results of the program over time. Impact differs from outcomes in that it looks more at net effects after taking into account what would have happened in the absence of the program. So to review, the theory of change is explanatory and includes causal mechanisms to show why each intervention is expected to result in the intended outcome. It is useful to explain why a program may or may not work, whereas logic models are descriptive and they reveal progress in step-by-step fashion. So to summarize, the focus of embedded evaluation is to enable us to build and implement high-quality programs that are continuously improving and to know when to discontinue programs that are not working. I would like to draw your attention to the pink ring in the figure that reveals a sequence of steps that connects the various components of the evaluation just discussed. So you can see it says define, plan, implement, interpret, inform, and refine. These steps are not linear, but rather dynamic in nature. And they should not be approached as items on a checklist, but rather as an iterative process that will likely lead to refinement in previous steps. The components of the evaluation process should be seen as impacting and influencing each other. So I will conclude by emphasizing several key tenets of formative and summative program evaluation that should be clear from this presentation. First, evaluation is systematic and relies on rigorous research procedures, including quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods data collection. Second, evaluation focuses on operations, which involves studying the program's process or the way in which the program is conducted. Third, evaluation focuses on outcomes and its effects for the intended beneficiaries. Fourth, evaluation evidence is compared to a standard. This involves assessing the merits of a program by comparing the evidence to some set of expectations or other established criterion, such as the program's goals or compared to expectations established by governing agencies. Fifth, evaluation is about improving programs and policies. The purpose of evaluation is to continuously improve and contribute to the field of theory and practice. So, out of time, but I ask that now we consider what opportunities may be lost if we don't utilize more robust evaluation designs that enable us to articulate program theory, wherein we can trace our path to greater impact. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. All right, our final speaker, Kimberly Topp.
To follow Ellen's talk. This is totally appropriate for me. I want to thank the organizers for the invitation to speak today. I want to draw today some connections between academic physical therapy and the growing of apples. Apples require constant assessments of soil, water, light, temperature, pests, pollinators, as well as skilled orchard pickers, cold storage, transportation, processing, and sales. And for this analogy, the apples that we're talking about are the products of our academic programs. These are our learners. If I can get going forward. There we go. Each academic program may be considered to be an apple tree that produces a number of apples per year. The yield kind of set by CAPT in order to maintain apple quality and ensure that there is sufficient tree branching to support the actual crop. In keeping with the analogy, you might think about robust branches of the apple tree as highly qualified faculty and carefully chosen sites for excellent clinical education. If each tree is a program, then there are 294 CAPT accredited or candidate apple tree programs across the country. And some have questioned whether 294 is too many. I would argue that our profession and society needs as many very high quality apples as we can actually produce. With CAPT accreditation, we all produce the red delicious apple that you see here. It's ready for immediate consumption. This is our entry-level physical therapist, ready for mentored clinical practice. Workplaces, however, vary. And some of our Apple graduates need to be ready to go into interprofessional environment, like this apple sausage or apple stuffing. Some of our graduates are going to bring their deep passion for community service, and they might bring apples to food pantries. Some of our Apple graduates will pursue further education or processing, if you will, to become apple juice or small batch apple cider. Now, there is actually only one native apple tree variety in the United States. That's the crab apple. But there are actually 7,500 varieties of apples. Each program can't possibly produce the high quality apples in each of these varieties. But if we focus on varieties suitable to our environments, our profession's 294 tree programs will surely grow the many varieties needed for health and society. I'm advocating for mission-based and data-driven apple production. So you may or may not know that it's possible to grow apples from a seed. However, they will only be of high quality if you graft your chosen apple variety to really good rootstock. And I think about the rootstock as CAPT, very valuable. And then we all have a graft of the entry-level red delicious apple. The other 3 to 4 varieties that your program's tree should be suited to your mission, your environment, your institution, and your goals, just as Ellen just talked about. And interestingly, when you stay with this analogy, apple varieties mature actually at different times of the year. When you think about it, our profession's move to competency-based education fits really well with this grafted tree analogy. Some varieties of apples mature and should be harvested earlier in the year than other varieties. Those apple graduates are ready for the next step in their careers. If they remain on the tree until the other varieties mature, they will drop and possibly even rot. So let's say you've chosen the 3 to 5 varieties of apples or graduates that best exemplify your program's mission. You need data to make sure that the quality of your apples are what you expect, okay? If you think about it from a program view, data from your own program's tree will help you determine if you need a soil consult, if you need pollinating insects, or even special handling to prevent premature falls from the tree. Benchmarking against other trees or programs that grow the same variety of apples will support development of new cultivars in our profession. And lastly, national data will inform our profession whether we are really addressing society's needs. Do we need more Gala or Granny Smith? In other words, do we need more specialists in pediatrics, population health, data science, clinical education, wearable technology? Do we actually need more apple trees? So are all of our apples being consumed? In other words, are all of our graduates finding meaningful employment in physical therapy? Do we need more of our existing trees or programs to grow early maturing varieties of apples? Would this reduce the cost of producing the apples? Would these faster maturing apples or graduates be ready to go on to advanced training and specialization? Pearson's law acknowledges the work of Carl Pearson, whom some consider the father of statistics. When performance is measured, performance improves. We all know this. When performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates. We need to regularly share data and discuss it with a growth mindset in our profession. This is formative assessment of programs. We all measure our program's performance at least every 10 years to meet accreditation standards. We celebrate and then try to catch up on all the activities that were put aside during the accreditation process. But how many of us actually bring program or outcome data to our monthly faculty meetings? Are we asking our students to review and weigh in on our program's data? The ACAPT Excellence Framework can jumpstart these discussions and help your program in its pursuit of excellence. The framework is the product of many individuals in this conference, and there's an article in DScPT describing its development. The ACAPT Institutional Profile Survey and the Engagement Measure surveys for both core faculty and graduating students are mapped to the 12 categories and category-specific criteria of the Excellence Framework. These will help your program track progress and benchmark against like programs. Sharing your anonymous responses nationally helps the profession identify trends and areas of need. We're working right now on the 24 data from the ACAPT Institutional Profile Survey, and here are just a few examples from the 2023 survey. We all work very hard to develop our curricula. We work hard in faculty development. we work hard to support our students, but actually fewer than 50% of our programs ask graduates if they're satisfied with their PT education. We all strive to recruit outstanding faculty, but only 10% of programs have full control to determine their number of core faculty. Expanding our program's professional foundational science is going to be slow if only 27% of our programs can recruit faculty who procure extramural funds for research. So we as a community have reached a tipping point. It's time we respect each other's program's unique mission and contribute and share data for all to thrive. Our society needs thousands of exceptional therapists working in clinical practice and in many areas of influence beyond practice. Think about healthcare advocacy, policy development, population health, equipment design, health education, human factors engineering, etc. I ask, what varieties of apples or graduates is your program's tree producing? Do the varieties match your program's mission? Are there varieties that only you can grow for our profession? Are there varieties you should be growing and you're not? I leave you with the question, how will you assess the quality of the 3 to 5 varieties of apples produced by your program's tree, ensuring long-term contributions to the profession and the wider world? Thank you.